everyone? Christian Duke from StrengthAddicts.com here at the official PARRILLO Performance Gym with nationally ranked NPC Bodybuilding competitor Scott CANATSEY. Scott, how's it going today?
Oh, it's going great. Just finished training some legs here with John.
Awesome. And you know, before I even get into the interview, you were doing some leg presses, and I literally thought you were gonna have a heart attack. You actually did 50 reps to my 20, and it was phenomenal because you had Scott, like, not Scott, you are Scott. You had John like screaming in your ear, and you know, Carrie was looking over at me and was like, you gotta push harder, because we were like helping you out there. It was crazy. I honestly thought you were gonna die at rep 30, but you just kept coming back and coming back, so I have to give you kudos for that. But to sort of get the interview started, as everyone knows, I have my sort of, I hate to say canned, but it is sort of my traditional question. And you've been in the game for a while, so if you could take us back to when you very, very first got started weight training, whether it was for high school sports or to better yourself, whenever it was, why did you first get started weight training, and then also who or what inspired you to compete?
My weight training, my sense of being a bodybuilder is quite organic. 1969, 1970, I was lifting heavy bricks on poles behind my barn at 8 and 9 years old. You know, just wanted to be strong. I had one friend that would come back there with me, and we'd see who could lift the most bricks on the poles. Just wanted to be strong. No influence from an Arnold. There were no gyms. No mainstream media.
What year was this, you said?
Bodybuilding. This would be about 1973.
Okay.
73, 74.
So right at the very beginning of the golden era, but there was no, it wasn't like it is now.
I'd never heard of bodybuilders.
Yeah,
I didn't see any. I
sure.
just knew I wanted to be really strong. I was a comic book freak. I wanted to be a superhero. I mean, that's really where it came from.
Yeah.
And then once I saw Arnold and Lou on Wild World of Sports for that Olympia, that I was like, wow, people really look like that. I can do that. And I knew right then I could do it. I mean, I knew in my head, I was like, that's me. That's just what I'm going to do.
Now, when you said that you would lift stones behind the barn, did you grow up in a farm or something like that?
Yes, I grew up on a small farm. We had horses and chickens, pretty much,
Which is hard work. I think a lot of people don't realize it. Like, farm life is actually pretty tough.
A lot of bale and hay, a lot of because I did a lot of the work myself. I was the youngest son and got stuck with a lot of work. That's for sure.
But the good thing about living on the farm too is like your diet is probably a lot more wholesome than a lot of people that have to go to the supermarkets and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. We had a full acre garden. I have 7 siblings, and my mother, we were all 4-Hers and grew a huge garden. So the farm was pretty much like a big 4-H project for the kids. Kept everybody out of trouble, taught them how to eat well, have disciplines. It was just a good life growing up.
We were in good company. Jay Cutler apparently came from a farm too. So
yes,
farm life, yeah. And as far as competing goes, I mean, was it also just, like you said, seeing Arnold and Lou, and well, I guess what got you into, I mean, this was like in the early 70s when you were a lot younger, but what got you onto that stage? Because you said you've been competing since 83, you said?
83, I did the 1983 Mr. Indiana University. In the lightweight division, I weighed 139 pounds.
Wow.
I was a little guy.
Yeah.
But what really got me into competing, initially I was a powerlifter. At 14, did my first powerlifting event. By 16, I won the Indiana State bench press championships, won the Midwest when I was 17. 123-pound powerlifter, little guy.
Yeah.
Then I got injured, actually as a high school and collegiate wrestler as well. Got injured, had to get an ACL reconstruct, and then my shoulder was giving me problems, so I decided to stop wrestling. The rehab hit me in the gym all the time, and I was starting to see some nice significant progress finally, because as a wrestler I starved myself way too much. My nutrition wasn't sound, and so I was gaining muscle and losing muscle and gaining and losing, always staying muscular but never really growing. Once I gave up the wrestling and just started eating consistently, then I really started growing.
And I don't know that wrestling and bodybuilding have a lot of similarities, but one thing that I remember about wrestling in high school is like the wrestlers would change weight classes quite often. Like 1 week you'd be this, 1 week you'd be that, 1 week you'd be binging, the other week you'd be running with a garbage bag on you. It's just really crazy. So yeah, I can see where like that was very demanding weight training wise. When you first got on stage, I guess, in the 80s, what was the vibe like in that time? Because again, 73, when you got into bodybuilding, like you said, it wasn't like it is now. You didn't really even know it existed. But even in 83, a lot of people say, Pumping Iron came out in like the mid-70s, but even in 83, I don't think it was quite as huge as it is now, right?
Oh, nothing like that. Actually, I trained in a small gym called Artizone and Alley's Gym on the west side of Indianapolis. It was a very hardcore joint, all free weights. That was all that was in there. And we had a lot of fun. That's where I powerlifted. But also there were some bodybuilders that came into town from Florida. It was funny. I'd never seen a real bodybuilder. I was like, wow, it was Mr. Florida. I can't remember his name. It was John something. I was like, that is a fantastic physique. And that took me from powerlifting to bodybuilding immediately. When I saw that, I was like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
The vibe was different because it wasn't, there weren't as many competitors, number one. There was only a few of us around, so it was a very strange thing for us to do, number one. People thought you were strange to be a bodybuilder. And number two, it just, you had this it seemed like just a small group of people that just loved the bodybuilding lifestyle. It was kind of an isolated thing, you know.
Sure.
I just ran with this group of guys that did it. People that knew that we did it thought we were strange, and our eating habits were strange, and, you know, everything was just very unusual.
And even Arnold too. I would think like on the West Coast, you know, Los Angeles and Tinseltown, and, you know, I would think, you know, it's probably a different group of people than Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, which is real blue collar, real hardworking, where maybe they didn't really like understand so much. And you had competed in the AAU, you said also, where I think the strength sports were a little bit more
Much more dominant. Yeah.
Yeah. So and then in '86, was that your first NPC show?
That was my first NPC. It was called the NPC National Qualifier in Indiana in 1986, and I won my first event.
That's awesome.
Again, I weighed in 141 pounds there. I was a monster, and won the lightweight division.
Now, did you see? Was it different? I guess as an athlete, because in the NPC bodybuilding was the main thrust, I would think. So you probably saw it immediately, right? Like, in other words, when you were competing in the NPC, you were the main draw, whereas with the AAU, you were kind of like...
Yes, it was just pure bodybuilding. I loved it because I like powerlifting, but
Yeah.
powerlifting came to me pretty easily. I was just always strong, you know, so it wasn't quite the challenge. Bodybuilding, I don't have great structure, you know. I have broad shoulders, but I have a thick waist. I got that Branch Warney kind of thing going on, so, you know, it makes it a little more difficult, but I love it. You know, I love to do bodybuilding. I know I got the gears, and it's a patient sport about sculpting your body, and so I know I have enough structure to be able to facilitate the muscle that I need to be a good bodybuilder, and I know I can become a pro and become a pretty decent Masters pro and have some fun at it.
Absolutely.
At 51, I can't even
I still
imagine
can't
stopping
believe you're
competing.
51, but that's wild. That's wild. So 83, you get started, you're doing powerlifting and bodybuilding. 86, you do the NPC shows, and then onward. But did you bring any of that powerlifting along with you as far as your training goes, or did you have to scale that back and focus more on the sculpting and less on the actual poundages?
At that point, I hadn't met John yet, so I was still very much geared up into just heavy lifting is what makes you big. And so I was I was using powerlifting and just not starving myself anymore.
Right.
So, and actually was able to gain some size. Learning to pose a little bit, I think, helped and connected me with my tissue better. And that really changed my game once I started posing. It changed my bodybuilding. Where the gears really changed is in 1991. I was training with Rachel Mathias and her husband Greg. She was a world champion, 3-time powerlifter, and then went to the NPC to bodybuild and ended up with a couple of junior national titles, junior nationals, junior USA. I think she won. She got 3rd in the nationals, 2nd in the USA. She was a beast. John worked with her the whole time. But John came to Gold's Gym West in Indianapolis in 1991 to train her, and she was my training partner, and so I ended up training with him, and that's how I first met John. Which was very cool, through a very good friend of mine and John's, Barry Brooks. People in the NPC know him as Uncle Barry, works with JM and the guys. Just a dear friend of mine and of John's. And so he was my real connection there. And that's where I started becoming introduced to pro bodybuilders. Barry had him coming into the gym, and I met him when I'd meet John. And it was just this whole nother level I was introduced to. When you meet the pros and you just get to be around them, and you have this inspiration to be like them, it just took me to another level just to be there.
Yeah, and something that I noticed too when we were just working out here earlier, I saw how the rapport that you have with John, like when John, I think we were talking about sucralose and stevia and some things, and he was talking about like chloride bonds, I don't know what, it was all went over my head, but he always, like we talked on the phone a couple times and he'll stop and say, did you get that, do you understand, he'll ask you a question, and I appreciate that because honestly, like sometimes I'm not quite with him, but I saw how you were looking at him and you really admire him and a really good rapport there, but you're very knowledgeable yourself. I mean, you're a coach and you train people, but it just seems like you can always learn something, you know, in this game. You know what I mean? And then that's something really cool. You know what I mean? And there's not a lot of John Perillos really that are quite that high up in the game. You know what I mean? As far as your own coaching goes, one of the things I like about you, we've been talking now for some time, and I think you're a very, very honest person. Which I'm not saying that the sport's not honest, but there's a few shady coaches out there. You know. What do you say to a client that maybe has an overabundance of heart, but maybe a scarcity of reality? Like they'll say, Scott, I want to win the nationals this year, and there's no amount of money that's too big. I'll pay you whatever you want, but you've got to get me to be the next Sergio Oliva Jr. I've got to win next year's nationals. what do I do? What do you, because there's some coaches, they'll take the money and they'll say, oh, yeah.
Oh yeah, and there's a lot of people who just don't realize how good you have to be a national champion.
Yeah.
It's up there,
Yeah.
and it's years of work. I think because of just the advent of bikini and figure, people getting pro carbs really quickly, it skews the fact that a bodybuilder still, it's like getting a doctorate. There's 8 or 10 years that goes into this before you can get to that level of patient, hard, disciplined work. No different than getting a doctorate. You're getting a PhD when you become a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
So you have to look at it like that, and people just don't, the reality check comes when you do take them. I like to take person through the year. When someone tells me they want to do this or that show, I say, let's start working together, and in 6 months, let's see what you look like.
Absolutely.
And that way it brings them back a little bit. You're able to watch the progress, then they can really see as you're dialing them in a little closer, gaining a little muscle, structure's looking, it's coming together, Then you can stop at some point and say, okay, let's compare you to some of the guys you want to compete against right now. Can you beat this? Do you think you can beat this guy? What do you think? And so you start teaching them about their own structure, about what a judge is looking for. And over the time when you're training them, they start to get that reality. It's like, wow, next year I want to do.
Right.
And so then it just takes that kind of reality check.
And what I like also that you said is, let's see how you look in 6 months. A lot of competitors are shopping for a coach for one show, and they'll expect you to, it'll be night and day in one show, and you really can't do that in one show. You can't really understand a client, or much less the client understand themselves with one prep. I think it takes a little bit of time.
It takes several actually, because of the fact that your body changes from show to show. And so even knowing myself over the years, I have to change my strategies a little bit. And thank God I have John with me, year to year. He's just been my rock,
Yeah.
Because I have this tendency to scale it back a little bit or not eat enough because that old wrestling mentality. And John beats me in the head. You're not eating enough. The only reason you're not growing is you're not eating enough. So,
Yeah.
And he really stays on me. And that has been just a big thing for me to get my food together.
Well, I think he told me on the phone, I believe he told me on the phone that there was a competitor that was actually getting ready for competition on, was that 9 or 10,000 calories or something like that? And I couldn't believe that because, most of these competitors that I talk to, and I will, of course I won't say any names, but they're like practically starving themselves to get on stage. 10,000 calories, you're not hungry, you're probably actually enjoying the process.
I'll tell you feel good all the time. Your metabolism's so high, because my ceiling was a little over 5,000 this year during contest season. That's a welterweight. I'm not some super heavy.
Yeah, well, that's unheard of.
I'm taking in 5,000 calories, and a part of it, a big portion, 2,000 calories, that is John's Cap Dry. I mean, I can't say enough. That product is amazing. Not doing a spot on it necessarily, but you should check it out.
Well, talk about that though, because you had told me about the Cap Dry, and you had said that there's other MCTs out there, but they're not like Cap Dry. Why aren't they like Cap Dry? I mean, I really want you to.
The big thing is, coconut oil is an MCT, but John puts his through a process where it's created like jet fuel is done, put under pressure, and it is actually taken from 9 calories per gram to 8 calories per gram, and it stores into the liver and comes back out as ketones. It's not going to store as fat. So it has a different dynamic and a different function in the body. Your general MCTs, I mean, I'm sure if they're not fractionated, it's still an MCT, it's good for you and things like that. We're talking about bodybuilding. This is a science, and we're trying to get things down to the raw number that we can, man. And so you scrape everything out that you don't need, and that Cap Dry is an MCT that's got everything out of it that you don't need, so you can use it and perform the way you should, because you get energy levels that are unbelievable. And on top of that, your muscle fullness. Because what happens is it uses the Cap Dry preferentially even over the glycogen. So you're going to burn the Cap Dry first, then you're going to get a glycogen burn, and you're 45 minutes into your workout and feeling like an animal still.
Yeah.
And getting a great pump and still going. So you can actually get 45-minute or hour-long strong workouts, not deplete yourself, get done, refuel, and you're ready to go again. If you're doing 2 a days, you can do it strong when you're taking in that kind of calorie intake.
Absolutely. No. And I think that's important too, because even like the gentleman, there was a post that I put up, and the gentleman said, oh yeah, that's a great product. People swear by it. It's been around since the mid-90s, and you actually...
It had been around, I've known since about, when did the product come out, John? 89?
Yeah, for me it goes back because we tested it for a lot of years. Nobody even knew what an MCT was. They were only using it basically in medical situations.
So yeah.
So no one even knew of the product. So John brings this product to play, and even men like Ronnie Coleman picked up on it real quick.
For sure.
So the great bodybuilders from the 90s Many of them use the cap try. I mean, it's just because there's no way to get the level of calories that you need by just consuming food. You really can't. So you've got to find some way to amp it up, keep the calories clean, keep them so they're good burning, you're not accumulating fat, and cap try is the answer.
Absolutely. And I guess, you know, sort of wrapping up a little bit, what plans do you have? Actually, you know, I have a couple more questions. In terms of, and I also wanted to just echo what you had said earlier also about the MCT, where there are other MCTs, but this one is just that much better. And because it's for bodybuilding, that much better is so marketable, because bodybuilders are always looking for that edge.
Yes.
You know, maybe the mainstream public isn't, but the bodybuilders, they want that edge. They can leave no stone unturned, and this is a product they can have all year round. And
Absolutely.
So I think that's really important. As far as being a bodybuilder on the level that you're at, and this is something that I always try to tell people because they don't really understand. I actually, on Carrie's interview, we talked about it. In my opinion, you know, the NPC is the amateur, quote unquote, amateur feeder federation for the IFBB, but the way that the NPC is run and the depth of the lineups at the national level shows the NPC really is at the same level as professional leagues around the world. I mean, it's just that good.
Oh, absolutely.
So you're at a level where not only are you nationally qualified or competing at the national level, but you're at the very top of the national level. So you're so close to a pro card that you can like literally taste it, but yet you don't have it yet. So what keeps you coming back? What do you tell yourself, whether it's you know, whether it's something you tell yourself or a mindset, or what, in other words, what do you do to keep coming back? Because surely there's nothing dramatic that you have to do because you're so close.
Really, it's just my love of the sport, my love of the physique game in general. I'll always compete. I mean, really, I'll probably carry laughs, but I mean, when I'm 70, God willing, I'm still going to be competing. I just love to do it. And so, gosh, I mean, even if I wasn't competing, I would still be bodybuilding because it's my lifestyle. I mean, I don't stop. It's a year-round thing. It's just what we do, you know. So, competing is just kind of the end result of living a bodybuilding lifestyle. It's not that I need to compare myself to other people as much as I'm an artist, and the only place I can present my art is on a bodybuilding stage.
Absolutely.
I love to pose, you know, and John's really taught me how to pose. I was a terrible poser for a long time, and presentation was probably one of my biggest weaknesses. This year my presentation was considerably better. He worked with me really hard on posing this year.
Yeah, and I tell you, presentation is real big too, because they say for that, and I always use a presentation example for this. They say that 01 Olympia, Jay Cutler, Ronnie Coleman, they said that Jay had beat him in the prejudging, and Jay even admits it today. The reason that he lost was because he didn't pose his physique the right way.
He didn't, and not hard enough.
Yeah, you know.
I would suggest the same happened when he beat Ronnie. At the end, Ronnie was beat up and looking like, you know, he was just tired and not holding himself together. Jay was boom. Yeah. And I think, they were looking at him for minutes like that, and I'm sure that's what won it for Jay. He stayed solid.
Absolutely.
A similar story, John has told me, you know, about other bodybuilders where it's like, Dean Caputo, I remember the story particularly at the USA, he just kept holding the pose, he just stayed in it, he stayed strong no matter where he was at, and they kept looking at him, and other guys were falling out, and they ended up going to Dean because he stayed strong on stage the whole time. This is bodybuilding. It's not about the gym. I mean, the gym's what gets us to the stage. You know, we pose. Bodybuilding's about posing. It's not about Snapchatting in the gym. I see all this crazy stuff going on in the industry. They're posers. You know, really, there's really, the reality is the gym is what creates it in the kitchen, and then we are artists and we present on stage, and that posing is the most vital part of bodybuilding. And if you don't have your posing together, you might as well give up your game.
Absolutely. Now, 3 more questions, I promise. This is a quick yes or no one. You could, you know, dovetail a little bit if you want, but it's a quick one. If you get that pro card, will that be it, or are you going to compete as a pro?
I would like to compete as a pro. I know I'll at least step on stage a couple times. I'd like to see the Masters game get a little stronger because I'd love to compete as a Masters at 51.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little tougher to compete against the 30-year-old guys. But, you know, I've had my luck this year. Even in the season, I, you know, won the Derby Festival in the open class in Pittsburgh. So.
Because honestly, I mean, where you're at right now, it's really not a question of if. It's just really when. When is it going to happen?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's going to happen. But a lot of people say, you know, 51, and you don't look 51. That's another thing, too.
Thanks.
I remember, and this is no insult to anyone, but when I was, even before I got into the sport, the Masters were kind of like, it wasn't as deep as it is now. Now the Masters level is no joke. The Masters level is really no joke.
It's extreme.
And, yeah, so Okay, so here's a big question I need to ask you. This is the second to last question. Carry a rep. You know, I think the world of, and I think the world of you also. You guys are engaged to be married, so congratulations on that.
Thanks.
And I almost asked her how you guys met during her interview, but she was getting a little teary-eyed, so I didn't want to push it, you know, because I don't want to make a woman cry. I mean, that's frowned upon, you know, like you can get beat up for that. So I wanted to ask you, because you said you'd answer. How did you guys meet? And again, congratulations on your upcoming.
Oh, thanks.
marriage.
We met through a mutual friend. Carrie had moved to Indianapolis from a little town south of Chicago in Illinois, and moved in with a very good friend of mine, actually the godson of my son, or godfather of my son. And so she actually saw a picture of me at his house and was already kind of interested, wanted to get into shape. She was really heavy, and said, "Who's this guy?" You know, and my friend Maurice told her about me and that I trained people, and she immediately got my information, called me, set up a time to sit with me. We sat at Starbucks and talked to her, and it was this big girl who wanted to be a bodybuilder, but I could tell she had a lot of heart, and she was a nice lady, and I wasn't training anyone at the time. I was just working and was thinking about getting back into training, and she's like, "I'll pay for your membership if you just train me, and just train with me." And I was like, that sounds cool. So me and my son actually became friends with Carrie and started training together. And over that first year, her progress was just so freaking amazing. You know,
Yeah.
at first, you know, a 350-pound woman, you look at her at 6 feet tall, even, you're like, "I want to be a bodybuilder." You're like, okay, you know, you're kind of a dreamer, but you know what? That dreamer was for real, you know. So because she showed me that first year, she made these tremendous strides. Just worked harder than anybody I knew. Was throwing up all the time. That girl don't let her puke in here anymore at Gold's Gym. It was so funny, but she just pushed that hard all the time, and ate well. And over the time, I mean, Carrie's just made, as you see, her progress has just been nothing short of phenomenal.
Absolutely.
So, and kudos to her. I mean, I can give her all the instruction and the love in the world and stay behind her, but she still has to do it, and she just follows well. She really listens to instruction. She believes me. She believes John, because when I actually, it was kind of a funny story. I told her, I said, "When you get in a good enough shape, I'll take you to see John Perillo." and she says, "Okay," and she did. She got in good shape, and I was like, "Okay, let's go see John." And John was duly impressed as well, and has seen Carrie make amazing strides. And meeting John and coming to this place just, again, elevates you to another level. You're in the history here. You know that John has taken people to the very pinnacle, and he can do the same for you if you just listen and you just do what is necessary to do. It's a science, and he is a scientist. He is, I like to say, he's the OG. He's the original guru, buddy.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely.
So he really knows his stuff. There's none of this new crazy ideas. I'm sorry.
There's a lot of it out there.
Yeah, if it fits your macros is not bodybuilding. You're not putting good quality in, you're not going to get good quality out. Maybe you get some nice veins come out from your sugar. Good luck in building with Pop-Tarts. You know, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So you've got to just be, if you're a real bodybuilder, eat real food. You know, and John taught me that. John would never in his life tell anybody that if it fits your macros is any kind of a bodybuilding style.
And there's so much of that going on. I mean, I like some of those guys, you know, like I like Kali Muscle, you know, they're nice people, but if you really think that Coca-Cola and ramen noodles are going to build muscle, then you're just out of
silly.
your mind.
Yeah. There's no quality
So,
nutrition going on there.
And I'm a fat guy, I'll tell you that, but I mean, that's just crazy. But the kids, you know, the kids really, you know, unfortunately, they take to some of these fads, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. It's easier.
And I don't even think Kali Muscle's eating that stuff, you know, but it's just a gimmick, you know, and
It sells easy, people like it, it's easy to do. When you're really young, you can eat all kinds of crap, but again, keeping abs is not the same as being a bodybuilder. You know, these guys think they want to be a beach body, but to grow, you have to give yourself sound nutrition. You can't build a house with junk material. It's going to fall down soon. When you build a house, you use good wood, good nails, and good steel. And a physique is built the same way.
Okay, so I told you I had two more, but I'm gonna lie, it's one more because this is it.
Sure.
So at this gym, there's so much equipment that you wouldn't see. I have never seen. Like for instance, that leg press machine with the inertia and all that. I've never seen that in my life. What do you think about the equipment here at the Parillo Performance Gym, and how has it helped you as an athlete build and maintain more muscle mass as opposed to say if you were training with more generic equipment?
Oh,
or
my
with
gosh,
generic,
yeah.
because more generic would imply this is generic. It's not generic at all. Well, you know what I'm
But
saying.
just run-of-the-mill equipment. Not a big fan of the gyms, the commercial gyms and machines that say, this works this body part, do this. Because I don't care if you're on a bench, you're not working chest unless you're concentrating on it. You're probably working triceps and delts unless you figure out how to do a bench press, which is true of 95% of the guys out there benching. It doesn't, this equipment in this gym, like if we were to go around, it's designed to put you in particular positions, but you still have to do the force yourself. It's not anything about going through motions. John forces you to contract with every rep. He stays with you through the rep. You know, so it's not even just the equipment. The equipment's beautiful. He's designed it himself, manufactured it, and then it is top of the line. You know, well, Nebula came out, you know, and it's just a copy of John's stuff. So,
Well, you know,
frankly,
I used to think Nautilus was the gold standard, and it's very good stuff. But this stuff, I think, buries it. I mean, this
Oh
stuff
my gosh.
is just. I mean, because Nautilus is more sort of like that mass-produced stuff. This is the kind of stuff that I think that the gym has got to, like, you know, drop some serious cash
It's
on the table.
designer
but-
equipment,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. And
Absolutely.
that leg press, again, nothing like that. John hasn't even let anybody really film and see exactly what's going on. We got a little bit of footage today, but that is a one-of-a-kind machine. There's not another one on the planet. He designed and manufactured it, and it's not even completely done. It's hard to believe. It's just been
I
such a
couldn't get over
massive
how
piece.
sturdy it was too. I mean, I was real. I mean, because you know, as a leg press, you know, I was scared. It's sturdy and it didn't even creak. I mean, it's just like pure steel.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and all of his equipment's like that. If you come and train at the Performance Center, this equipment is top-notch. Everything you get on is stone solid, you know, and it's built and constructed correctly so that you can keep perfect form.
Yep.
That's what it is. And again, when you work the way John wants you to work on this equipment, well, you get development like you wouldn't believe. Because
Absolutely,
John
yeah.
is the man. He understands how muscles cross joints and how the tendons work and how it all functions together. He's an engineer, you know,
Well,
and you
even-
can really see how he designs this stuff to be correctly engineered for your body.
Exactly, and that's a key thing too for your body. Because when I sat down there, you guys were actually adjusting it for me, for my
Yes.
height. Which a tall person generally walks into a gym, and it's like you just got to make do with what's there. And even if it means doing the exercise incorrectly, otherwise you can't do it.
You don't have a choice.
You don't have a choice. That's perfect. Okay, last question. Who would you like to thank for where you are today? Most important question of all.
Oh gosh, so many to thank. Being old, my parents at first. I mean, they've always inspired me. They just let me dream and follow my dream, and they supported me through the whole thing. You know, back when sounded crazy to be, you know, in this industry. Now they're seeing me making money in it and being a professional, and they're like, hey, you know, obviously the kid had what it takes to do it and loved it, and you know, so they support it. And I have, you know, nieces and nephews that follow me and a young sister. So, gosh, I think it's hard to thank everybody. I thank a lot of people that just inspired me by following me, you know, and people that just believed in me and you know, encouraged me. I got to thank them, you know, because over the years, you know, there's so many I've forgotten that have encouraged me, and I just want to say thank you to all those out there that just have encouraged me. And John is the cornerstone of my bodybuilding. Really, I wouldn't be where I am today without John's knowledge and friendship. He has coached me along the way, virtually over the 25 years. Well, I mean, 2016 will be 25 years I've known John. Hasn't been one time I've met with John that I didn't learn something new. And sometimes I learn a few things new, so it just never ends. And so it just shows me that John's even continuing to learn. And he passes it on to me, and I pass it on to my people. So it's just, again, it's this whole thing is very, to me, feels family. And I like that about bodybuilding. It's a legacy that we're trying to pass on, that I pass on to my people, that John has passed to me. And so, again, thank John, huge. And I always want to thank God for my life. You know, I've had some crazy stuff happen, and He's always kept the path clear for me to continue on, even though I've done dumb stuff. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for top-ranked national level NPC bodybuilding competitor Scott CANATSEY, Christian Duke at the PARRILLO Performance Gym. Thank you so much.